Swansea against Australia at St Helens. In the commentary box, Brynmore Williams, formerly of Cardiff and Swansea, of course, and the Wales and British Lions scrum half. And first of all, Lynn Davis.
It may not be the sunniest or the warmest venue for this tour opener, but the sense of anticipation hasn't been diminished one iota here at St Helens. Looking through that Swansea team, Richard Moriarty stands out as the elder statesman. He played against the 1981 touring Australians, and Swansea's main hopes rest on his ability to win something akin to line-out parity. Ken McCartney is the referee from the Scottish Rugby Football Union. The kick-off comes from Tim Kelleher for Australia. And the first touch wasn't the most sure of all from Swansea. It's Richard Moriarty that straight away, or Richard Webster rather, straight away, that takes on the opponents. But there will be a quiet word with the touch judge. And that's Ed Murphy on the far side. And just something on the fringes that wasn't up to scratch. And the captain's already in the opening half minute of the game. It's Troy Coker that will have a word in his ear. The giant figure. This really must be the tallest quintet of back five forwards to play at this ground ever, from number 4 back to number 8. It's huge. That's Phil Kearns, the captain, with the shortest man in the back five, Sam Scott-Young, at 6'3". The first touch for Swansea goes to Anthony Clement, and that's sure enough. And just having been at Lansdowne Road last Saturday and witnessed Australia's win over Ireland, Brynmore Williams, what does Swansea then have to be aware of in order to avoid that fate of Ireland's?
The Australians tend to win line-up ball with amazing regularity, so Swansea have got to win their own ball, and they've got to guard against mistakes, because Australia use that as a platform to attack at whatever part of the field they're at.
And that was the first lesson there, not only in throwing straight, but throwing to the man as well. Swansea somehow were retrieving it, not always legally so perhaps. And again, there's a little edge there. Richard Moriarty, I just mentioned that he was the elder statesman, a remarkable character who played against the 1981 touring team. In fact, played some rugby in Sydney himself during one summer break, but very much an influence in that Swansea pack. Tim Kelleher will now try and ease the pressure, and indeed Australia find that foothold in Swansea territory, or just miss out on that. Safe rather than sure, and just a little tension in the opening few minutes, Brynmore.
Yes, as you'd expect, it's a big game for Swansea, of course, because they've had such two fantastic seasons, and a lot is expected of them today. Too much pressure perhaps on them, if I dare say that. But Australia, of course, are under pressure. They've lost game after game when they've come to Wales, their first game that is, so they want to get off on a winning start today, there's no doubt about that, so the tension explains itself.
The body language of number 7, Richard Webster, spoke volumes of his attitude there, quickly taken by Peter Slattery. Straight in then. Not all that much progress made there. Seems the wrong way around to then give free ball away to Anthony Clement, and I'm sure that Clement will be grateful for that and will nod a little word of thank you to Peter Slattery. It's Australia that called the shortened line this time around. John Eales has 5 on his back. He's the tall figure at the back. They're all tall figures. In front of him, Warwick Waugh. 4 for Swansea is Richard Moriarty. In front of him is 8, Stuart Davis. The captain, Kearns, throws in. Again, it's not all that well guarded, and just slightly isolated as well, but so untidy and scrappy at the moment. And really tense moments, then not a pretty sight. Front row of Keith Colclough on the far side, Gary Jenkins and Chris Clark, that's Swansea. And pressure on them, certainly the control was there, but that's interesting. Quickly taken by Robert Jones. There is a huge amount of space. Is the support there? Not quite tight enough, and that's a shame. Robert Jones, in fact, took his own players by surprise, really exploded for the first 10 metres and got away from the support as well as the cover. It's not the most comfortable looking scrum at the moment, as Slattery pressurised on the fringes again, this time Alan Reynolds. And it'll be interesting to see the way that Reynolds and Webster, especially in that Swansea back row, take the game to the opponents. Welsh international hooker Gary Jenkins. The aim is true this time at Richard Moriarty. The outside hand, although that was over the top, it's allowed, perhaps the line-out was over. Jones has it. Aled Williams, the outside half. Interesting angle from Kevin Hopkins. Again, such good midfield defending by the Australians. They hardly ever seem to be pressurised in midfield. They take it nice and easily across, pick their little spots. And it's very difficult, as the Irish found out on Saturday, to find any holes there.
Absolutely, and if you notice with that tackle that the Aussies tackled Swansea on the Swansea side of the game line, and that's where you're expected to tackle, of course.
You notice the Australian three-quarter line, heavily weighted left side, which offers that little bit more space if should Tim Callagher want to come right. That's the fullback. Again, that's Swansea's scrum. It has to be remembered as Gavin put Slattery into a little bother. Aled Williams as well for an outside half, acting as a forward. Such a shame that it wasn't driven home. The Australian prop forwards, Matt Ryan and Andrew Blades, are replacements for the tour, and having had long journeys and little practice time, they struggle just a little bit.
Well, a tremendous shove here by Swansea. I think they've started the game so well, dictating the pace of the game, and you can only do that in situations like the scrum and the line-out. But the pressure told on Slattery there, he dropped a ball.
Those familiar with the background of Swansea's rugby, they've not always been known for the grittiness of their forward effort, and that's been part of the transformation this season, in the fact that they've gone all season without defeat. That's the difference in weight. Obviously the advantage to the tourists, and that's only in weight. In height, it's far, far bigger than that. So Andrew Blades, 25-year-old who only arrived here over the weekend. I'll just a quick look at the Australian team. With that numbers 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, really the tallest ever quintet to appear here, surely. And I've already mentioned Ryan and Blades as the late replacements. Then that midfield of Horan and Little, such experience there, and I'm sure that the relatively inexperienced people around them will look to that duo really to hold the firm hand in midfield. So it's just a little nick. Interesting that Blades, Kearns and Ryan were the young Wallaby front row in the late 80s, so they're not new to one another. It's just Kearns has been a familiar figure in that front row now for quite some time, but with so many injuries blighting the front row, they've had to call 2 replacements. Matt Ryan, playing on the loose head today, played a tight head against Connaught and suffered in that game as well. And again, here we have him standing up, not quite interested in keeping his head in the scrum, and it's interesting, and that has to be one of the great turnarounds, I would have thought, to think that here a touring side doesn't really want to scrummage Swansea.
No, but Australia over the years, they don't want to get into any individual battles in the scrum. They tend to want to get into a team formation in the scrum and try and take it forward. When a side like Swansea is impressing themselves on them, especially in the front row, they don't like the pressure. But then again, no side likes pressure. And subsequently, Swansea have a penalty.
A familiar sight for us here in Wales, not quite as familiar perhaps in Australia and New Zealand. Aled Williams. And you can see the rubber tee, which has become part of his routine these days. And Williams here can create something of a rumpus should he gain for Swansea a 3-point lead. He doesn't strike them much better, but somehow the wind took it away. So the early pressure weathered, and a quick restart straight at Anthony Clement. The bounce favours him. Now he has Titley outside him, although he's wandered away from that, but weaving a delightful pattern yet again, Anthony Clement. has the support been swift enough? It's the Australian number 7, Scott Young, who got into an offside position. Robert Jones again, eager and ready to execute the quick penalty. Gary Jenkins just held up. Jones again. The switch is on for Alan Williams. Lurking there is Richard Webster. Just slightly too complicated, and Alan Reynolds switches it then. 7-a-side rugby here from the Swansea club as Simon Davis attacks Damien Smith. Alan Reynolds well covered by Warwick Moore. And what covering from the giant lock forward. Really, Australia had been stretched left and right, but yet this 22-year-old giant was there in position when Simon Davis was able to put in the lovely little pass. Just watch this, the determination. Whoa, clean through Alan Reynolds.
Tremendous period of play by Swansea, I thought there. It's great for their psychology. They're getting all the possession. They're not frightened of using it. 7 pairs of hands, that movement. Superb stuff by Swansea.
The line out degenerating into an early shambles still. The game, or the ball rather, as Simon Davis. So unfortunate for him. The bounce seemingly was kind, or initially was kind, but in taking one eye off the ball, unfortunately, made something of a mess of it. Damien Smith comes into this narrow channel on the right-hand side, number 14 for Australia. You can see number 14 there. No great space for him there. That would be the natural way for scrum half Slattery to go. Indeed, Gavin and Slattery. That's the nursed little kick into the box. But again, so swift were the tacklers on Slattery that there wasn't time to pinpoint a spot. Matt Ryan is the man with hands on haunches at the front of that Australian line, opposed by Chris Clark. It's clearly one line-out ball, but untidily done. And the pick-up and drive, War sets it going. Slattery, well, the referee was in the way, and Slattery was unfortunate there. Was he also taken a little bit late? No. And the kick harmlessly over the dead ball line. The Australian team not familiar with some of Swansea's tactics. They well need to watch Alan Williams and Mark Titley et al. At the restart. They can make things happen quite quickly. Again, the touchdown as Gary Jenkins comprehensively shackled by Tim Gavin. Huge figure of a man, the Australian number 8. Tim Gavin stands out to that line out at the moment, obviously directing matters in that touring pack, with his captain down at the front throwing in. The aim is at Gavin. Matt Ryan sets up yet another Australian drive, but again, not all that well tied in, and Swansea might well have got hands on that, as Webster looks back to where most tacklers are standing, well, would-be tacklers. That could bounce, interestingly. Kelleher needed it to be kind, but quick support from Eels. But again, it's all on the retreat for Australia, and that's why they had little option but to try and kill that momentum. They wanted Kelleher to move away from the ball, and his reluctance means that Anthony Clement now will drive Swansea into that left-hand corner. Tim Kelleher came on as substitute in Saturday's win over Ireland. Came on as a centre. Anthony Clement, his opposite number, who now ranks amongst the world's leading fullbacks. Swansea's tall men, Richard Moriarty with Paul Arnold in front of him, positioned at the back. It's well won, but it wasn't straight, and Ken McCartney, the referee, just offers Phil Kearns a word of advice. He'll referee it, and Phil Kearns can captain his side. Again, there are signs of some reluctance in that front row to stand its ground. Peter Slattery, who's spent such a long time in the wings as an understudy to Nick Farr-Jones. fact, was an understudy back in 1985, but then just dropped out of the limelight for a little bit. Slattery again, and Carl this time. There is some open space there, but again, the bounce favours Titley. The balance running takes out 2 tacklers. The support takes out some more, but so unfortunate that again offered a good position. A little knock-on spoils things.
Titley is certainly the wrong man to be kicking to, but great work by Scott Gibbs, getting back into position to support Titley immediately then, and that's what teamwork is all about.
There's a far better Australian scrum. Took the swiftest of passes, and Carl offered no real option but to throw up a high kick towards Anthony Clement. The full-back and Titley between them somehow release Simon Davis. Davis wants to attack Damien Smith. The ball kept in play, but Tim Kelleher, whoops, and that could be a little naughty. Not deemed to be intentional though, and again, just showing the tensions here. And despite the fact that Kelleher would have played on the world's big stages, even here at St Helens today, there's just that little eye on the opponents. Williams not wishing to bring the centres into the game as yet, but Scott Gibbs is there. And look how it's such a quick touch. It's on here for Alan Williams. With Titley free outside. Carrozza defends it well. Knew that it was his corner and made sure that there was no further progress to Wales's international right wing. Mark Titley, so deceptive and offered any space at all. Deadly, but Carrozza had covered him very well.
Tremendous variety of tactics by Swansea, it must be said. The kick by Alan Williams then had snow on it coming down, and it's important the very tactics against an international side that keep them thinking, and they're on their heels, and it's great to see.
The Swansea captain wears 8, and it's Stuart Davis. 6 is Alan Reynolds. 4 is Richard Moriarty. The Warwick War gains for the Torres line-up possession, which won't be all that welcome because it sets them on the retreat again. The advantage would go to Swansea. 17 minutes gone and we're still awaiting the game's first score. It's strange that over the years that scores have been very close. It was up until the last game in 1984, no side has scored more than 12 points in the series of matches. That's a free kick brought in by the back row when it had gone out to the scrum. It would be wise, and it is wise of Slattery just to take a moment, get people breathing. Phil Kearns again, it's not all that, and again the delay, yes, and it seems such a strange tactic. Not making progress there as yet, and it may well pay Australia to get one firm foothold down in opposition territory and start from there.
Absolutely. And although Robert Jones was offside, and I don't mind seeing him offside, I think it's nice that they're pressurising the Aussies, although they're giving penalties away. As long as it's not near the post, it doesn't matter. It's keeping the Aussies thinking. And saying that, and what is absolutely vital to Swansea is that any possession they get, they convert into points sometime in this first half.
The giant John Eales at the back with 5. Another giant, Warwick War in front of him. Another giant, Tim Gavin, in front of him with 8 on his back. And it's Gavin that claims it, if anything, the shorter of all of those. Eager and keen is Paul Arnold. That's where all the pressure is. And those two packs get together. Gavin, first sign of his strength being put into the match. Again, not cleanly enough gleaned, and the body on the wrong side. Killing it, Alan Reynolds. So from first Australian attack, really, into Swansea territory, a penalty is yielded, and it may well be that Tim Kelleher will kick a goal.
Gavin looking very strong, but that's Swansea's probably second mistake, I should say. Simon Davies dropped a pass, but Webster missed a tackle, allowed Gavin to cross the gain, and that's what gave Australia the platform they needed. Although Swansea prevented the ball coming out, and the penalty was given. Can't afford to make mistakes against the Australians.
Not an easy responsibility this, with Michael Lynagh having ruled the roost as far as kicking is concerned for Australia over such a length of time, but there strikes that beautifully and gains for his side. The first point, excellent kick from Tim Kelleher, and a lesson in taking opportunities when they're presented to you. But Swansea really are pressurised for the initial 20-odd minutes, and then once in Swansea territory, Australia get the points.
I think that's a measure of a class act, isn't it, always, is that whatever possession you get within easy reach of the line, or that wasn't an easy reach, of course, must be converted into points, and Kelleher took the opportunity.
Good driving here by the Australian forwards. It's way behind the gain line for Sam Scott-Young, not as we normally see them. They would have started running before receiving the ball, but there was a little static. Robert Jones keeps it in play and has his fullback, as ever, on his shoulder and ready to support. A bigger gap, or a wider gap, required by Ken McCartney. The advantage with Phil Kearns. The option of War, Eales and Gavin. Eales claims it. Carl, Horan. And this is far better play. The switch is on. Well covered by Swansea, though. They hadn't overcommitted themselves. And when Slattery would have wanted to attack, he was forced, because of the cover, to push through that little grubber kick. You can see that there's a little greyness around the place here, and certainly conditions foreign to the Australians, more so than Swansea. Again, the line-up ball gleaned by Australia. Slattery, Kearns, his captain. This is good pressure here. Sign of the ball is all they want. Slattery shouldn't really have to get in there. That's delicately done, but it'll be well covered, or just about covered. Wasn't well covered. Made hard work of it as Aled Williams will quickly get to the 22. Knows that Mark Tickley is there. So the pressure will be quickly sent downfield, and Orkarotza can do very little, but watch the ball, guard the ball as it wanders over the far touchline. And in one fell swoop, Swansea is pressure released.
Tremendous work here by Aled Williams, I thought, again wanting to take the pace of the game, although they're in a defensive situation, but taking the game well into the Australian half. Great play by Aled Williams.
Well, it was back in 1966 that a crowd here could say they witnessed a Swansea win over the touring Australian team. Will there be the same story going home this afternoon is the question to be asked. They're obviously delighted with that refereeing decision, which penalises Australia and offers Aled Williams his second chance to kick it goal.
The impression the Australians created on me last Saturday in Dublin was they were able to absorb huge amounts of pressure early on in the game, absorb the pressure, not give anything away, and then score the points themselves. And what is a little bit ominous today at the moment, I suppose, is the fact that Swansea are having a lot of possession, but not really threatening to score at all. And it's important in this first half, especially because it's the psychological period of any game, that they actually get points on the board. It's vital if the enthusiasm is going to be continued.
And that penalty award shows that the Swansea having been awarded 5, that Australia would have been under a little bit more pressure perhaps. Aled Williams has obviously had a new haircut for this big occasion. Here though is his chance to bring things on level terms. It's only some 27 metres, and this time has the length, has the direction, and it's 3 points all. That will be relief for Williams, having missed with his first attempt. Now brings his team back on level terms, and they can breathe again. The drop kick restart comes from Tim Kelleher. yet again, something of a surprise because of the standards that have been set by the Australians over the last 12 months. One doesn't expect that sort of shortcoming when they're restarting.
And that's why we judge them so harshly. They've set such high standards, we expect a lot of them. I'd be disappointed if I saw one of the lower sides in the Heineken division, Heineken leagues, not get 10 yards at kick-off. I mean, that is a poor mistake at this level.
Robert Jones. Aled Williams again, spotting a chink of light behind that Australian defence. Kelleher well positioned though, retraced his tracks very quickly to fill that gap. Will the wind take that over the goal line? It needs some patience on Anthony Clements' part. It doesn't do so. And probably the strongest right foot, certainly in British rugby, will get the ball way into the stand. Warwick War has the white band with blue tape. A rugby development officer in Sydney, 22 years of age. Lock partner wins it though, John Eales. Not quite the fluidity one would expect from the Australians. Horan though, silky running, and combines that silkiness with some determination as well. Slattery again, holds it up so well. The on-rushing support wasn't quite tight enough. Scott Young pulls other little slips as Carl was in search of some space, but with 3 Swansea men there. Well, there was a punch in there, says Ken McCartney. And the penalty awarded against Swansea seemed so unnecessary. It would be unnecessary in any case, but especially so that that danger had been covered. Warning to the Swansea forwards. Watch what they're doing. Someone had thrown a punch there. The referee had seen. So suddenly, a crowd that had been quite noisy just a few minutes ago when Aled Williams brought the scores level goes back to being muted again. 100% success rate. Can't improve on that. Interesting that Tim Kelleher plays hooker in the Australian 7-a-side team. He's a tall figure of a man, but obviously quite a footballer as an international fullback and centre. But a hooker, or a rake as they're called, down under. Here though, this opportunity to restore the Australian lead. The wind might takes it against the post, still danger here. And again, that little handling slip. Matt Ryan sends it up. And on a plate for Slattery. Little. What a compliment. Perfect compliment to Horan, because he's big, stronger, offers the other options that the stockier Horan doesn't. Still it's there. Slattery, Carl, Horan. Lots of running off the ball. Carrozza. Again, Swansea defended quite well. They're not overcommitting themselves. Still the driving goes ever onward. Slattery referees it as well. On the fringe is Keith Colclough for Swansea, 3 on his back. He may well be in an offside position. He's being driven back and not heeding the warning. He was inching ever forward when in fact he should have been behind the last man. And finally yields a penalty in what is a relatively straightforward position for the Australians.
Tremendous period of play by Australia there, it must be said. And what impressed me was Carrozza and Horan, 2 backs, remember, taking the ball into the maul and the ball coming back quickly. There is so much responsibility on the shoulders of the ball carrier, yet backs doing the jobs of forwards, and that was superb. Can now see Colclough holding on to Slattery. Swansea under pressure, and these are the sort of basic mistakes you see when people are under pressure, giving away penalties. I wonder if Keith Colclough feels sensible in doing that, because it looked like a 7-point try had the ball been released by Slattery.
Again, the rather long wait for the boy to come on with some sand for the kicker. It's one of those things that tends to slow down the game a little bit. The referee does advise him that next time perhaps he should be ready to come on as soon as the kicker indicates that he needs to kick for goal. Kelleher thus far has succeeded with one, has struck a post with one, or an upright with one. What will the third time prove? So having gone from 100% to 50%, the swing here goes either way. This time strikes it well and doubles his tally and doubles his team's tally, and a 3-point advantage.
The king is dead, long live the king. Although it looked a simple kick, the pressure on these lads at the moment, I mean, it was important he converted that. He timed the kick very well indeed, and it must be said that whenever Australia are in the Swansea half, they don't come out of it without points in the bag.
Forthright tackle from Richard Webster. Again, so unfortunate the ball then, when released, wasn't controlled. Anthony Clement sets off on a run. Again, couldn't quite escape the grasp of Jason Little. That was so well covered by the Australian centre. Not many people can stay apace with Anthony Clement, but there Little made it look so easy.
Clement is quick, isn't he? Jason Little is no slouch himself, as we saw in Ireland last week, and to catch Clement is a reference in itself. But Swansea again under pressure. Australia seem to be coming into their game at the moment.
The space is right side here, although Scott Gibbs, well, that's his normal route. What can be exploited from that, though? That may have been slightly forward, and Paul Arnold certainly wasn't expecting it, as he was that odd inch or so in front, and again, probably overcomplicated, when the director thrust and the simpler pass would have paid dividends. It's Matt Ryan on the far side, Phil Kearns in the middle, and Andrew Blades on the tight-head side. Blades plays for the Gordon Club in Sydney. Again, we notice that it's in some discomfort that scrum retreats, that Australian scrum retreats, and it's deemed in the laws these days that to hoist the opposing scrum in the air is illegal, and it's very difficult to know who's the guilty party there. Sometimes the supporting lock can get underneath a prop and hoist him, but obvious difficulties there for that Australian scrum. Australian 22 in view, and Ken McCartney with obvious difficulties in getting the scrum to settle. You can also see the Australian three-quarters heavily weighted left side with Kawatsa, Little and Horan there, and this has to be the last chance for both front rows. They need to settle. They're offered another chance. Could it be that the late replacements on tour are finding the pace a little too fast for them? The free kick awarded. Slattery denying Robert Jones the quick opportunity of taking that free kick. On the run goes Alan Reynolds. 2 3/4 taken out by Reynolds, which should give an overload here for Swansea. Beautiful hands from Scott Gibbs. Titley, support again. And the hands let Swansea down. Such a shame. Good thrusting at last. They put pace and direction into their attack, and suddenly they stretch the defence. The crowd obviously warming up to it all as well. And again, the scrum under all sorts of duress and retribution being taken on the fringes. It's not a happy situation for forwards when they're being driven back in the scrum. Some of them unceremoniously lifted and twisted, and the reaction then is to look for other ways of sorting out things.
With obvious Swansea's intention to scrummage and to tire out the big heavy pack of the Aussies. and they're succeeding in that at the moment. They won't like this sort of contest, the Australians. They want to run with the ball and not contest fiercely in the scrummage as they are.
That again, well, Keith Colclough is making Matt Ryan rue the day that he appeared on this tour at the moment, and Ryan is very slow in coming up here, and the penalty that time was for pushing the prop up in the air, lifting him, and Tim Gallagher will bring some much welcome relief to that Australian forward pack.
Yeah, obviously the Australians will not like this sort of pressure, but who would? I mean, let's be fair. But they're not used to it, and Keith Colclough has been selected to create these sort of problems in the Australian front row.
Kearns and his jumpers can't quite tie that in, offering Swansea rich fringe pickings. It's now making the ball available, that's the problem, and Slattery and Gallagher are the quicker witted of the lot of them. And the seriousness of that look, displaying graphically how pressurised things are at the moment. Again, Swansea plays Paul Arnold and Richard Moriarty towards the back. The aim is at Moriarty. It's a free midfield ball. Skipper Davis in one swoop again is down and up and driving. The support is there. Jones snipes away. The ball is free. The drive is on. It's on its way to Jones again. There are people free here. Scott Gibbs. Yes, the first try of the Australian Tour of Wales is scored by the Swansea centre, Scott Gibbs. A long period of pressure and offered that distance and that space. Well, this man is quite obviously unstoppable. Scott Gibbs, then, that'll be his meal ticket for quite some time.
Well, a tremendous way to finish the end of the first half. I mean, Robert Jones saw the gap initially. He released the ball to his pack. They were all there driving, and it's so vitally important they're staying on their feet, and the ball is released quickly, and that's what gives the opportunity. And Scott Gibbs is so strong in that sort of situation. He says thank you very much and crosses the line. Superb play by Swansea, and well deserved after that great scrummaging we saw earlier. Scott Gibbs loves those sort of opportunities created by Robert Jones.
Here, Aled Williams can raise Swansea's tally to double figures, but drifts away. So not altogether comfortable with his kicking responsibilities at the moment. But his side are 2 points ahead with just 2.5 minutes remaining in the first half.
Robert Jones is looking very sharp this afternoon. He went first. He saw the half a gap there. These heavy Australian back row weren't able to spot him. He released the ball and he was up on his feet again. Great play by Robert Jones, it must be said. And Scott Gibbs is just there and he crosses the line. A great try by Swansea.
And that's the other point where that could have been so dangerous. They seem to have it under control. Mark Titley, for once, pulls back from something extravagant or unorthodox. This is the way to head back right from the kickoff, and Australia camp themselves down on that Swansea goal line. Tim Cavin just floating in and out, indeed gets hands on it, but Richard Moriarty claws it in, and it'll be difficult for anyone else to get hands on that other than the Swansea player. It's slowly and tidily on its way, and the sharpness of Robert Jones turns it into something rather simpler. Robert Jones was the sole non-Frenchman to play against South Africa for the French Barbarians on Saturday. That was played in Lille. Wasn't over impressed with the South Africans, but enjoyed his stay. Kearns can only find Richard Moriarty. Suggestion of an outside hand again, but Paul Arnold has wrestled it free, and as we're used to here at St Helens, the scrum half and the supporting kick, and what a superb kick it was. Quickly taken though as Kelleher off Carrozza, puts the ball way downfield, probably too long, and rather harmlessly will go over the dead ball line. Good to see, though, people prepared to take quick lines out.
Well, Swansea will be well pleased with their first half performance. They've now converted the possession they've acquired during the first half into points, and that was vital. But they varied play. That's been the key to their success in the first half. Line-up ball, I think, has gone probably to Australia, more of it. But the scrummages, Swansea have been so strong, and Mike Ruddock, I'm sure, is well pleased.
Aled Williams, half gets the support. Indeed, there was nothing there, so there was nothing wrong in Richard Moriarty being positioned there. There's no set piece, no ruck, no maul. Swansea have it, and it's their responsibility to get it away. Is it? Partly. It's probably the referee can now see it, but they hadn't tied it in, and that really is a loss of discipline. As you see, Kevin Hopkins rushing back to get into position. They thought they had that well tied in, and then to let it slip at the end was a loss of concentration, and the panic on Kevin Hopkins as he saw and realised that in getting back into midfield was quite something. Chris Clark on this side of the Swansea scrum, a young student at the university here, as Australia tie in the Swansea defence. Set up the drive, but somehow they themselves contrive to lose that. So the dampness in the air, that little bit of water on the ball hasn't helped handling, hasn't helped the game standards. It's been rather slipshod and depended very much on the intensity of the confrontation rather than on the smoothness of the skills. Paul Arnold, lock forward, Welsh international, gained his first cap in Namibia, jumping at 2 for Swansea, opposed by Warwick Wall. It's the middle line ball, Tim Gavin, Matt Ryan, just looking slightly pedantic on the retreat. Gary Jenkins can he now disentangle himself from the grasp of John Eales and half a dozen other Australians. John Eales, 5, the Australian lock. Gary Jenkins, Swansea's and Wales's hooker. That's half-time, and what a huge sigh of relief that must bring out to the Swansea camp, because here at St Helens in the first match of this Australian tour, at half-time it's Swansea 8, Australia 6. Ken McCartney restarts this Swansea effort, and that's an interesting restart. Now then, that was a good tactic. With conditions as they are, the ball as slippery as an eel, and they had to drive it on the ground to get it to aquaplane of something, made it so difficult for the tourists. Quickly recovered by them though, and this is a sight we're more used to as they control that, and they will look now to drive it off the fringes. They won't allow Swansea any more latitude. They'll tie them in and drive them. That ball is so well protected there that it's impossible for anyone to get a hand on it. Richard Webster is doing his best to get himself, or Stuart Davis rather, to get himself lodged in there. But it needs to move, constantly move. Richard Moriarty might be penalised here. If he collapses that, then it should be a penalty. Well, it could only have resulted in Peter Slattery being able to put the ball into the box, and perhaps that's enough at the moment. It's sufficient just to nurse the forwards upfield, and it's in. Well, you can see the huge advantage that Australia has at the line-out. But we heard Alex Evans say at half-time that Australia will want to tie it in, with Swansea having Webster and Reynolds far sharper in the loose. They don't want to offer free ball on the ground to them. So this will be tighter, sniping. Slattery yet again nurses his forwards upfield, and that, I'm sure, whether Peter Slattery was listening to our studio expert, I don't know, but obviously the tactics are right.
Yes, and why not? With 5 huge men in the line-out, I mean, it is the tactic to employ, especially in the early part of this half, to try and dominate up front. They did have the best share of the line-outs in the first half, and it's obviously their strongest part of play, and it's important that they develop that part, I'm sure.
Well, that wasn't good ball for Swansea, but so swift was Gary Jenkins in there. And again, as Alex Evans says, he's such a busy player. He's not everyone's favourite by any means, but he's so effective, so busy. And it was his work that paved the way for Robert Jones's clearance.
He's such an industrious player, and it's so important. It's only when you see an industrious hooker that you see how important that part of play is. He's spoiling, he's scurrying, he's supporting, and it's all vital, even from a hooker.
Troy Croker takes a long way round to get involved there. Picks his spot on the fringe, knows that the support will come through War. The rest of them circle around. And who said that the rolling ball was dead with the new laws, as it's performed here with some expertise. Again, but this time, because it wasn't released, and this is where the criticism comes into the new law, in that all that hard work, all that expertise then is nullified just because someone collapses.
Zudin looking at Matthew Ryan, he's looking redundant at the moment. He's obviously had a hammering in the first half. He was very passive in that first try by Scott Gibbs on the fringe of the mauls, and he's looking very tired early on in this second half.
He played his first game against Connaught a week ago and looked probably even more redundant on that occasion, without being unkind. He's obviously finding it difficult to pick up the pace of the game. A long journey across, and of course it's summertime in Australia, and prop forwards wouldn't do all that much sprinting and weight training during the off-season.
In saying that, I wouldn't have thought that was the Australian philosophy. I'm sure Alec would like to comment on that at the end of the game, that the Australian philosophy is speed, power, intelligence, communication, and we've come now to expect that even from a prop in an Australian jersey.
Karen Jenkins is receiving some treatment. There's a little nick above the eye, which he's had from quite early on. That's the best vantage point probably around the ground here. That's the cricket pavilion, and of course Australian-Welsh relationships over the years has been very much concentrated there as well, with Glamorgan in the 60s twice beating an Australian touring team, and of course the Swansea spin twins of Shepherd and Presley, so influential in 1964. Robert Jones somehow managed to get his pass past everyone, but wasn't too dangerous. And there isn't many a cooler head around than that of the Swansea fullback Anthony Clement. The focal point of Swansea's line-out effort, Richard Moriarty, opposed by John Eales. The two extremes really, the young and the not so young. And Eales, having just played international rugby for a year and a half, has 17 caps already. All sorts of options on here. Carl sets in Callagher, the tackling isn't strong, Callagher denied again. Stuart Davis and Anthony Clement together somehow managed to prevent that tremendous surge from Australia's fullback.
There is no prettier sight in rugby than a man taking the ball at pace, and Callagher is so strong. We saw that against Ireland last week, and he nearly made the comeback. Great defence by Swansea. Stuart Davis doing the job superb.
And superbly on that point. That was done by Paul Arnold. Plucked that ball out the air. And the Australian players who weren't part of that line-out, because the ball had been caught, weren't allowed then to come in from the 10-metre limit. But Paul Arnold there, exceptionally well done, when in fact he's yielding a good few inches. But line-out work is as much about technique as well as it is about height. The floorboards here in the stand make a peculiar noise when the Swansea crowd gets agitated. The whole place shakes, and just getting to the halfway line is sufficient encouragement. Slattery, Carl, again a slant from Horan. No one touches him as he makes 20 metres over the tightest area on the field. And then the forwards directly behind. They're walking this. Swansea turn it, and for the moment prevent further momentum, and at a cost, as the stud marks then appear down the backs of legs and rumps as a punishment.
Tim Horan chooses his angles so cleverly, and he's so free to foot that he can make 30 or 40 yards before the opposition know about it. In saying that, I'm sure the Swansea back row were not too pleased with themselves, allowing Horan to make that break, but a super break by Horan.
And there's no movement whatsoever in that Swansea scrum. And Robert Jones can look back at them and give them a huge pat, because if you can't clear your lines off that sort of platform, then there's little hope. And Jones there, I'm sure as the forwards will get past him, he'll mention it to them, but that was perfectly done. Hugely experienced, 43 international caps already, and so many years in front of him still. The shortened line, 3 for Swansea, 4 for Australia. Australia's call, up to them, how many they want. Garin Jenkins. Some confusion in the Swansea ranks as Slattery again gets Horan setting up a ruck. Slattery, Carl. That may well run over the Swansea goal line, but again the bounce doesn't help Anthony Clement. Safe enough from the fullback. We've not seen much of him today. It's all been in a defensive role, and his great strength, people would confirm, is his attacking flair, if you like, and pace. Whether that's to come, let's hope so at least. Australia, again, advantage in both possession and territory. Second half has been very different from the first half. Wrestling going on off the ball between Ryan and Garin Jenkins. Still play goes on. That's most abrasive of the Swansea players. Richard Webster gets it into midfield, and Clement was in there. Kevin Hopkins couldn't quite control it, and for the first time Swansea venturing to move it that little bit wider.
Tremendous work by Webster, it must be said. I wonder if Australia are regretting not having picked David Wilson, because they are slow getting across the park. Tremendous opportunity created by Webster then.
The scrum had turned through the 90-degree mark, which then meant that it had to be reset. One of the new concepts of the season is that the referee keeps both sets of forwards apart until the ball is ready to be put in. That was badly controlled by Gavin. Lack of understanding between number 8 and scrum half, setting up Richard Webster on what is for him the most typical bread and butter charge. And next in line on an equally bread and butter charge is Garin Jenkins. This is different. And the pressure now on Kelleher. There were people coming in from in front of Kelleher, but it's the knock-on that's given rather than the penalty. They're slightly fortunate, the Australians. They were coming back from an offside position, and one or two certainly got in front of the fullback. This position, though, of Swansea's just outside the 22 with equal space either side. The load is this side as Scott Gibbs runs off the ball. Lots of running into space. Gibbs attacks the opposition. Half gets away, so well covered though. Number 7, Sam Scott Young, was offside in any case, which will offer Swansea a penalty, and you can see already the arms of Captain Stuart Davis outstretched in saying, let's keep calm, let's not get excited, let's not run this, for goodness sake, with a relatively easy kick at goal in prospect.
This is really thinking rugby by Swansea though. An up and under by Alan Williams, driving by Garin Jenkins before it, then Scott Gibbs coming in on the blind side of the scrum. They're keeping Australia thinking all the time. This game has been thought out by Swansea, and they're performing superbly well, it must be said.
His success was through kicking his side's only penalty, but now can further increase Swansea's lead. The crowd in its response tells the story that Williams again succeeds, and that Swansea now have a 5-point advantage. It's only now that the crowd are beginning to believe in what could happen here. It's been fantasy up until now. The thoughts of a defeat of the world champions here at St Helens suddenly becomes a reality, as again we see from Australia those little chinks of weaknesses that we don't expect. And it's in executing the basic skills that they've built their reputation. Keith Colclough is 34 years of age. Will feel today as an 18-year-old, I'm sure. He's having quite an influence on things, as that could have been awkward. That's even more awkward. Carrozza, not good skills. Anthony Clement gets the support of Robert Jones. Not many Swansea players there yet. It's there on its way. If it can be tied in, an Australian picks it up in an offside position. Keith Colclough wouldn't have wanted it there. It's tied in. Reynolds, Alan Williams keeps it in front of his forwards, and that is pinpoint. The crowd, even for that little grubber kick, is on its feet, realising how important it is at this point in time to drive home the advantage, to turn the screw and keep Australia very much on the defensive.
Good positive play by Swansea. A trifle fortunate, I thought, but then again, on days like this, that's when things go right for you. Dare I say it, is it going to be Swansea's day? But still positive, everybody supporting the movement, and that's so vital. And here they are, right by the Australian try line.
We have talked a lot about Australia's line-out expertise. Here is the extreme test. It wasn't tidily done, it's a try! Oh, and could it have been a knock-on? It may have been knocked on, but the referee certainly didn't spot it, but it doesn't matter, it's been awarded because Gary Jenkins has had a try. But I wonder, when we see it on the replay, whether a Swansea hand did actually get to it to knock it over the line at the line-out. Gary Jenkins, though, the hero of this instant.
But this is pressure at its best, and that they are so commanding in the line-out. One mistake and Gary Jenkins is on it in a flash. Superb pressure by Swansea, a superb opportunity to try by Gary Jenkins. Again we see it. Dick Moriarty was putting pressure on Eels. The opportunity comes for Gary Jenkins, and he has played superbly this afternoon. He's led that pack by example. A superb try for Gary Jenkins, and it's points that matter to Swansea.
It should be so typical now of Alan Williams to convert this from this, the most difficult of positions. Strikes it brilliantly, brilliantly. Well, what a scene that's being set here. I wonder if Max Boyce is here with his pencil sharpened, ready to write or compose a ballad, very much in the same vein as he did when Llanelli beat the All Blacks 20 years ago. The onus on the world champions to get back into the game. At the moment, they're struggling. They're 12 points adrift. Slattery. Again, it's not as tight as we would expect. Offside. Australia came here realising that the efforts of the clubs here in Wales would pose them probably the greatest threat on the whole tour. They've picked this as strong a side as they possibly could for a midweek game. And here, because of the lack of two props probably, more than anything else, they're not controlling the scrums. The rest of the game, Gavin hasn't been able to dictate, and the rest of the game is falling apart. Two balls. The line-out might help Swansea to have a second one, because this is the area at which they've been struggling, in which they've been struggling. Here, though, it's 2-1 at the moment, yet Arnold can still... That may have had a suggestion of a high tackle, but so pumped up is Robert Jones that he was able to bounce off that and put the ball in the path of the supporting forwards. Manfully working away is Keith Colclough and Richard Webster. Webster realises there's a little weakness, this narrow side. The rampaging Swansea forwards drive it on. Jones is poised, it's being killed. The penalty is against the Australians for handling on the ground. Free kick, hands, so it won't be a kick at goal, but I'm sure I would be surprised if it wasn't a hoisted kick, but no, It's got to be run into midfield. Gary Jenkins is the pivot. Alan Reynolds, the driver, into midfield. The ball, if it can be gleaned, would certainly present a switch. There's an overlap here. Jones, the initial snipe rather, but it should have been released, and there were people or supporting players diving in then to try and release the ball. But these are momentous times for the local club, certainly. The last victory was in 1966 against Australia. So is this writing a new chapter in the history of matches between one great rugby nation and one great rugby club? It was 9 points to 8 in 1966 to Swansea. Australia at the moment 12 points adrift with some 21 minutes remaining as Swansea get into an offside position. It's lasting the pace that's important for the Swansea players. As Kelleher gains for his team a foothold in Swansea territory, and that's not been a sight we've often seen the second half. Swansea won the first ever encounter against Australia in 1908 by 6 points to 0. So the last one was in the last game between the two nations was 1984. The war kicks the ball away to the half-backs. But now, perhaps Horan starts running down narrower channels, back to strength, wants to get close to Scott Young, Coker and Gavin. And that may well be the tactic. It's no good asking the likes of Matt Ryan to run in a wider arc. It's an interesting collection of characters. Hands on hips is Keith Colclough, hands on thighs is Chris Clark, and on the far side the hooker Gary Jenkins, and just advising them on how to jump and how to run and how to do lots of other things is Paul Arnold. Certainly whatever happens from now on, Swansea will be quite proud of their show today, whatever happens, because they've taken the game to the world champions and they've certainly rattled them. We enter the final quarter as Tim Kelleher again finds touch for the Australian team and gets them into opposition territory. Can they, though, drive that advantage home? It's a line-out, which is their strength. Shows how Swansea have fought back, because they were being swamped in the early minutes of the second half, but now it's very nearly back to parity. Robert Jones again getting away from would-be tacklers, setting the ball back as a good back row forward would. Now he's back in position to support a back row forward, his captain Stuart Davis. Not coming though, and that then is a vital flaw. What an influence this man has been on the Swansea club. Scored on his debut for Wales last season out in Ireland, and determination written all over his face. Should his team win today, he'll milk the occasion for quite some years, I'm sure. Can Australia provide a platform here? No, it can't. Just watch the breakdown yet again. Gavin and Slattery just not being able to get it together. And that kick from Carl was in no man's land. And lots of nudges forward as Carrozza and Slattery find themselves isolated and with not much confidence either. And that's a sad sight. I think we've grown used to Australians showing their undoubted talents, their confidence, and here we're seeing a different side of them, which isn't such a pretty sight.
I have to agree with that. They're looking an ordinary side at the moment. I think there's no organisation, there's no control. Slattery played well against Ireland, but I don't feel that he's that good a player under pressure. And without his pack commanding play like they have for long periods, that he looks a bit shaky. I mean, he's sort of turning back on himself. He's not used to his outside half, of course, that can't help him. But they are certainly lacking in confidence. I think it's down to their back row as well. They're a bit slow about the park. They'd hoped to dominate, they haven't. And they are finding it difficult.
Well, it's doom and gloom at St Helens, and it may well be omens for the Australian touring team, because at the moment, certainly it's doom and gloom for them, because they trail by 12 points. A grey day, and I remember well Max Boyce saying the same thing about Stradey Park when Llanelli beat New Zealand, and certainly it's not the sort of day that a touring side wants to be part of a game with such pressures as this. The crowd, quite obviously, don't care, because they'll be able to look in future years and remember and make the statement that I was there.
As a former Swansea player, I have to say it's difficult to contain my excitement. Superb performance so far by Swansea, but they've got to hang on now to make it a historic day for themselves.
17 minutes remaining, 12 points the difference. The local club Swansea in the lead. Scrum half Robert Jones puts the ball down straight to Tim Kelleher. He in turn straight to his opposite number, Anthony Clement. Robert Jones points to Clement. It's the far diagonal that he should be aiming at. The wind just takes it down over the goal line. Carrozza is forced to play it. Goes in a long loop. He certainly won't get outside Simon Davis. And that was Carrozza making a little bit of hard work for himself, because that ball could have gone harmlessly over the goal line. He could have minded it, and the restart would have been an orderly one on the 22.
Yeah, I'm sure they miss Campese as well. The wingers they have now don't look the natural footballers that Campese who create so much for them.
Slattery, Oran, the three quarters at last have a run. Carrozza, well shepherded by Mark Titley. The ball's on its way though. Support comes from Warwick Moore, but the ball eludes him. But Phil Kearns, the captain, is there. Much will depend on his leadership from now on, as Moriarty tries to release it. It's on its way to Robert Jones. Aled Williams will pump it downfield. No thoughts of playing pretty football here. If that goes into touch, well, there are no words to describe that. I'm sure that the side that loses today will wonder at their luck, because...
Well, a tremendous kick by Aled Williams here, and that displays confidence at its highest. And the bounce, I think, is telling us it is going to be Swansea's day. I hope I'm not saying that too soon, but a super kick by Aled Williams.
Well, the arc on that ball was beyond words. Again, a test of Warwick Moore and John Eales and Tim Gavin's line-out capabilities. Of course, they yielded a try the last time we had a line-out here. Again, the pressure is on Eales. There was a good deal of interference going on. Referee happy to award a scrum for the advantage. I'm sure you can hear the response of the crowd to this. Pushover try has that effect on people that they feel that when the scrum forms within this distance of the goal line, that backing of noise as the front row collapses. The penalty is awarded to Swansea. Do they drive it from here, or do they offer Aled Williams the opportunity to kick it goal? Yes, captain's decision. Out at half, kick for goal.
Australia succumbing to Swansea pressure there, taking the scrum down, obviously anticipating the shove, which has been so forceful throughout the game by the Swansea front row and the Swansea second row, of course, because they're all involved in that shove. A very solid scrum there by Swansea, and the second shove, Stuart Davis driving his pack on, and then the Australian front row taking it down, knowing that their try line was at Swansea's mercy.
You'll know as soon as Aled Williams strikes this ball how true his aim is. Wind didn't bring it in. It'll be interesting to hear Bob Dwyer, the Australian coach's comments at the end of the game should his side lose, because following the game in Munster, he was very critical of Munster's front row play, and especially of one prop in particular deemed his play illegal, and it'll be interesting to note his response to this. And how often have we seen that in this match, that the Australians, I'm beginning to wonder whether any of their restarts have been successful. It's been a catalogue of missed kicks and mistakes. Certainly the man in the middle there, Phil Kearns, has the responsibility of uplifting his team spirits. Robert Jones and Aled Williams, for once, can't get it together. Quick recovery from the outside half. And with hands trying to release the ball. Just holding on there. He's always on the retreat. And just to prevent any Australian progress, penalty given.
Yes, a shame that for Swansea. Good possession, with Aled Williams at slightly overrun the angle that Robert could find with his pass.
So it seems at the moment that it's only through the kicking of Tim Callagher from penalty awards that Australia can venture into this territory, which is Swansea's half. You see the 10-metre line there. Again, a shortened line, 4 men. Neil's positioned at the back against Moriarty. The younger man takes it. Ryan hands it on the plate to Slattery. Kearns standing off with Damien Smith. And Eales, not often you see an Australian as isolated as Eales was there. Now it's on its way though. Well, the Swansea defence was disorganised. But Gavin offered a little charge. Slattery again, this is better. Carl. But isolated, swamped, and offside. He played a long advantage period, but so tight was Swansea's defence that there wasn't a way through, so it's back to a kick and goal. Callagher has this opportunity from some 25 metres.
Australia trying to threaten. They are looking a bit confused behind, although the ball is in the hands there. But Aled Williams takes the game to the Australians, tackling on the air side of the game now, which is so vital. A great tackle by Aled.
There are 10 minutes remaining. Callagher here can reduce the deficit to 9 points. Well, that must be some sort of omen. To miss from there, and these set of circumstances with his side trailing by 12 points really spells doom and gloom. It's too far from Williams, normally such an expert in that facet of play. Slattery again happily misses the touchline. Matt Ryan makes his way towards the back to play a supportive role. He's just in front of Tim Gavin with Sam Scott-Young at the back. So Cook has gone down the front as Gavin wins it. Carl again, Little this time, but he's away from Webster. He's away from everyone. Well, great running from Little. At last, a head of steam worked up here. The momentum now has to be maintained. Swansea's defence given an opportunity to reorganise. They fanned out left and right. The ball is there for Slattery, but again offside, and Swansea won't be unhappy to yield a penalty there. Quickly taken by Slattery. The charge is on. Coker. Slattery again. Carl. Slattery. Callagher. But the defence here is blanket right across. Slattery yet again. Carl. And with the eye off the ball, but there will be... no, it wasn't offside. It would have been close to it, but so tight was the defence. You could see that Little was watching the opposition, and Carl, they were all with one eye on the opposition, and the ball finally dropped.
Tremendous defence here by Swansea. They're going up, putting pressure. Little, they're dropping the ball because of the pressure he was under. Tremendous defence by Swansea.
8 minutes for Swansea to hold on to this 12-point lead. Means that the Welsh leg of the Australian tour would have started on the best of terms. They've readily admitted that it was going to be difficult. But I wonder, having selected such a strong side, whether they thought it would be as difficult as this. 5-man line. Tim Gavin, the number 8, this time up at 2. Not foreign territory for him, because he has played at lock as well, but it allows Eels to jump off their back. So untypical of Aled Williams to drop it, and again, Little, so well held by Kevin Hopkinson. Aled Williams delighted to get in a foot just to hack the ball anywhere. It's defensive discipline that's important for Swansea here.
Swansea, Robert Jones, he's been so sharp this afternoon, taking advantage of any mistake by the Australians, putting pressure on. Richard Webster has had a superb game. He's won a lot of ball on the ground. He's doing his job there as a tackling flanker. Superb play by Swansea. Again, it's all about pressure and taking the game to the Australians, whether you're in possession or not.
The advantage certainly is here with Tim. Well, it should have been with Tim Gavin, and he made hard work of it. The penalty award goes against Swansea because of diving over, but again, it was untidily done. And Kelleher is again asked to kick it goal. So certainly there are no panic stations here, and that's a good sign of a class side that despite that deficit, there are no signs of panic. Phil Kearns happy to chip away at that Swansea lead, and hopefully at the end of the day just do enough to clinch a victory.
And let's pay tribute also to the composure on the Swansea side. They look so together mentally, and it's so vital at this stage of the game that they do keep their heads, keep their concentration, and keep their line intact.
50% success rate, all his side's points thus far for Tim Kelleher, as that isn't struck prettily and certainly not straight, and his day is turning into something of a nightmare. I well wish that today had not started as yet. 5 minutes to see a Swansea victory here at St Helens. There are 12 points separate in the two teams. There are bodies between Alan Reynolds and the opposition goal line, but that makes no difference. There's always the chance there that he'll knock people over. The 10-metre line separates the two lines. Again, the Australians vary their personnel. At the back this time, Troy Coker, formerly of Oxford University, the Harlequins, and especially Australia. Slattery gets the big men running, and that's perfect layback, because Eels wouldn't have wanted that. That was a sad sight. Moriarty and Robert Jones then will hoof it between them as far as possible. Kelleher has to go on a little track that's a forlorn one and a very unhappy one, just watching the ball tantalisingly bobbling away from him.
But Robert Jones has proved this afternoon he's probably the best scrum half in the world, I think. He's not often complimented for his strength and his resilience, but he's taken a hammering today, but he's been quite superb.
Well, this is now moving into desperation stakes, as way behind the gain line, Kelleher skied down. And Swansea have possession through Webster, but it wouldn't come. And that will disappoint Richard Webster, certainly. The penalty is awarded. It wasn't against Webster, he had done the hard work. It was a latecomer that went in and fell on the wrong side. Recomposed his composure, Tim Kelleher, just sufficiently to get in that relieving kick. Three minutes of the match remaining, and should the scoreboard remain the same between now and the end of the game, it'll read Swansea 18, Australia 6. That's free ball for Stuart Davis. Webster ever present at his elbow. The ball is on its way. Can it now be swept away? Jones, Alan Williams, a drop kick at goal to the left. Is it there? The drop kick surely seals it. Alan Williams, so quick to respond, not wishing to offer the opposition any pickings at all. Looks at the post, duly drops the ball between them, and Swansea now out of sight.
Tremendous try by Stuart Davis to start this momentum. He takes the ball across the Australian gain line. Great rucking by the Swansea side. A lovely pass by Robert Jones. And Alan Williams, whose kicking has been so good, keeps his head down and strikes the ball beautifully. He has also had a superb game this afternoon, but haven't they all?
Carrozza running down the dark alley, and a very lonely one at that, as so many of the forwards are slow in retreating. Webster, Jones shows again the supreme talent at his hands, as he then offers a chase for Simon Davis, and Simon Davis surely will grapple Damien Smith over that touchline. There will be scenes here, I'm sure, that will be new for so many people. The chant goes up for Swansea. The two-man line offers Australia the possession, but offers Slattery nowhere to go, and the scrum half happy just to get away from that danger position. Richard Moriarty in shot. This will be amongst his great achievements.
What?
Played captain Wales when Wales beat Australia in Rotorua, but this I'm sure he'll look upon as his finest hour. Swansea at last get line-out ball. Hopkins won't give it out. He'll take it on, offer the forwards a chance, and his scrum half again to keep it as close as possible, not to offer the opposition the free loose ball. Webster is there to tie it in. The ball is on its way. Colclough, of all people, plays scrum half. Clement now dances past one man, but the pass fractionally forward, perfectly timed, the perfect supporting angle from Williams, and a shame from the home team that it was the merest of millimetres forward. 15 points the difference between the two sides, and there'll be delirious scenes here surely at the end of the game as Ken McCartney enters play. He's had it on for injuries.
There's so much control in Robert Jones's play. He's been the architect of this victory. That's without doubt. He's been behind a superb pack. Stuart Davis, Webster, they've all been there supporting him. If a mistake has been made, they're there covering each other, which is why it's been such a great team performance.
Australia have to run out of defence. Again, they find a little chink. 15 points adrift. They need at least 2 converted tries and some other score. Little offered the wide open spaces, or Horan rather, which won't attract him unduly. Swansea won't care because they'll be happy with a line out. They don't want Australia to go down too near that goal line. Well, it's been deemed as a difficult tour for the Australians. They'd lost to Munster on the Irish leg of the tour. Now on their introduction to Wales in 1992, they find themselves facing defeat here. Slattery keeps the ball moving. Carl has to do the sort of work that forwards are expected to do. Eales keeps it in play. Damien Smith, for the first time added on for injuries, the right wing gets the ball, and that's not the way if you want to succeed. And that's the final whistle. Swansea here on an historic day at St Helens have defeated the world champions. A final score that will go down in history with Swansea 21, Australia 6. And just watch those scenes of sheer delight and delirium as Richard Webster and his captain celebrate, and the sight of dejection as Phil Kearns and his men make a very sharp exit.
Well, a tremendous performance by Swansea. Only one question I'd asked. Mike Ruddock said he saw the Heineken League as being more important than today. I don't agree with you, Mike. A fantastic occasion for Swansea, a fantastic performance. They harried, they scuttled, they spoiled Australia, they chased possession, they won possession. Webster and a lot of ball on the ground. Robert Jones and Al Williams had superb games at half-backs. They unset this area. A superb day for Swansea.
Well, some of Tennessee's players of 72 said they wished they'd stayed out with the crowd for longer to milk the occasion, and perhaps with the rush to get away from it, some of the Swansea players might be sorry in years ahead that they didn't stay there for that moment and share in the joy of the men that support the town team all season. Richard Webster, and there we have the captain. He surely will find for himself a little niche in Swansea Rugby Club's history. Stuart Davis. So many things have fallen into place for him over the last 2 seasons. Moment, obviously directing matters in that touring pack, with his captain down at the front throwing in. The aim is at Gavin. Matt Ryan sets up yet another Australian drive, but again, not all that well tied in, and Swansea might well have got hands on that as Webster looks back to where most tacklers are standing, well, would-be tacklers. That could bounce, interestingly. Kelleher needed it to be kind, but quick support from Eels. But again, it's all on the retreat for Australia, and that's why they had little option but to try and kill that momentum. They wanted Kelleher to move away from the ball, and his reluctance means that Anthony Clement now will drive Swansea into that left-hand corner. Tim Kelleher came on as substitute in Saturday's win over Ireland, came on as a centre. Anthony Clement, his opposite number, who now ranks amongst the world's leading fullbacks. Swansea's tall men, Richard Moriarty with Paul Arnold in front of him, positioned at the back. It's well won, but it wasn't straight, and Ken McCartney, the referee, just offers Phil Kearns a word of advice. He'll referee it, and Phil Kearns can captain his side. Again, there are signs of some reluctance in that front row to stand its ground. Peter Slattery, who's spent such a long time in the wings as an understudy to Nick Farr-Jones. In fact, was an understudy back in 1985, but then just dropped out of the limelight for a little bit. Slattery again, and Carl this time. There is some open space there, but again, the bounce favours Titley. The balance running takes out 2 tacklers. The support takes out some more, but so unfortunate that again offered a good position. A little knock-on spoils things.
Titley is certainly the wrong man to be kicking to, but great work by Scott Gibbs, getting back into position to support Titley immediately then, and that's what teamwork is all about.
There's a far better Australian scrum. Took the swiftest of passes, and Carl offered no real option but to throw up a high kick towards Anthony Clement. The full-back and Titley between them somehow release Simon Davis. Davis wants to attack Damien Smith. The ball kept in play, but Tim Kelleher, whoops, and that could be a little naughty. Not deemed to be intentional though, and again, just showing the tensions here. And despite the fact that Kelleher would have played on the world's big stages, even here at St Helens today, he's just that little eye on the opponents. And having had long journeys and little practice time, they struggle just a little bit.
Well, tremendous shove here by Swansea. I think they've started the game so well, dictating the pace of the game, and you can only do that in situations like the scrum and the line-out. But the pressure told on Slattery there, he dropped a ball.
Those familiar with the background of Swansea's rugby, they've not always been known for the grittiness of their forward effort, and that's been part of the transformation this season, in the fact that they've gone all season without defeat. That's the difference in weight. Obviously the advantage to the tourists, and that's only in weight. In height, it's far, far bigger than that. So Andrew Blades, 25-year-old who only arrived here over the weekend. I'll just a quick look at the Australian team. With that numbers 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, really the tallest ever quintet to appear here, surely. And I've already mentioned Ryan and Blades as the late replacements. Then that midfield of Horan and Little, such experience there, and I'm sure that the relatively inexperienced people around them will look to that duo really to hold the firm hand in midfield. So it's just a little nick. Interesting that Blades, Kearns and Ryan were the young Wallaby front row in the late 80s, so they're not new to one another. It's just Kearns has been a familiar figure in that front row now for quite some time, but with so many injuries blighting the front row, they've had to call 2 replacements. Matt Ryan, playing on the loose head today, played a tight head against Connaught and suffered in that game as well. And again, here we have him standing up, not quite interested in keeping his head in the scrum, and it's interesting, and that has to be one of the great turnarounds, I would have thought, to think that here a touring side doesn't really want to scrummage Swansea.
No, but Australia over the years, they don't want to get into any individual battles in the scrum. They tend to want to get into a team formation in the scrum and try and take it forward. When a side like Swansea is impressing themselves on them, especially in the front row, they don't like the pressure. But then again, no side likes pressure. And subsequently, Swansea have a penalty.
A familiar sight for us here in Wales, not quite as familiar perhaps in Australia and New Zealand. Aled Williams. And you can see the rubber tee, which has become part of his routine these days. And Williams here can create something of a rumpus should he gain for Swansea a 3-point lead. He doesn't strike them much better, but somehow the wind took it away. So the early pressure weathered, and the quick...
Swansea against Australia at St Helens. In the commentary box, Ieuan Williams, formerly of Cardiff and Swansea of course, and the Wales and British Lions scrum half. And first of all, Lynn Davis.
It may not be the sunniest or the warmest venue for this tour opener, but the sense of anticipation hasn't been diminished one iota here at St Helens. Looking through that Swansea team, Richard Moriarty stands out as the elder statesman. He played against the 1981 touring Australians, and Swansea's main hopes rest on his ability to win something akin to line-out parity. Ken McCartney is the referee from the Scottish Rugby Football Union. The kick-off comes from Tim Callagher for Australia. And the first touch wasn't the most sure of all from Swansea. It's Richard Moriarty that straight away, or Richard Webster rather, straight away, that takes on the opponents. But there will be a quiet word with the touch judge. And that's Ed Murphy on the far side. And just something on the fringes that wasn't up to scratch. And the captain's already in the opening half minute of the game. It's Troy Coker that will have a word in his ear. The giant figure. This really must be the tallest quintet of back 5 forwards to play at this ground ever, from number 4 back to number 8. It's huge. That's Phil Kearns, the captain, with the shortest man in the back 5, Sam Scott-Young, at 6'3". The first touch for Swansea goes to Anthony Clement, and that's sure enough. And just having been at Lansdowne Road last Saturday and witnessed Australia's win over Ireland, Ieuan Williams, what does Swansea then have to be aware of in order to avoid that fate of Ireland's?
The Australians tend to win line-up ball with amazing regularity, so Swansea have got to win their own ball, and they've got to guard against mistakes, because Australia use that as a platform to attack at whatever part of the field they're at.
And that was the first lesson there, not only in throwing straight, but throwing to the man as well. Swansea somehow were retrieving it, not always legally so perhaps. And again, there's a little edge there. Richard Moriarty, I just mentioned that he was the elder statesman. a remarkable character who played against the 1981 touring team. In fact, played some rugby in Sydney himself during one summer break, but very much an influence in that Swansea pack. Tim Kelleher will now try and ease the pressure, and indeed Australia find that foothold in Swansea territory, or just miss out on that. Safe rather than sure, and just a little tension in the opening few minutes, Brynmore.
Yes, as you'd expect, it's a big game for Swansea, of course, because they've had such two fantastic seasons, and a lot is expected of them today. Too much pressure perhaps on them, if I dare say that. But Australia, of course, are under pressure. They've lost game after game when they've come to Wales, their first game that is, so they want to get off on a winning start today, there's no doubt about that, so the tension explains itself.
The body language of number 7, Richard Webster, spoke volumes of his attitude there, quickly taken by Peter Slattery. Straight in then. Not all that much progress made there. Seems the wrong way around to then give free ball away to Anthony Clement, and I'm sure that Clement will be grateful for that and will nod a little word of thank you to Peter Slattery. It's Australia that called the shortened line this time around. John Eales has 5 on his back. He's the tall figure at the back. They're all tall figures. In front of him, Warwick Waugh. 4 for Swansea is Richard Moriarty. In front of him is 8, Stuart Davis. The captain, Kearns, throws in. Again, it's not all that well guarded, and just slightly isolated as well, but so untidy and scrappy at the moment. And the early tense moments, then, not a pretty sight. Front row of Keith Colclough on the far side, Gary Jenkins and Chris Clark, that's Swansea. And pressure on them, certainly the control was there, but that's interesting. Quickly taken by Robert Jones. There is a huge amount of space, is the support there, not quite tight enough, and that's a shame. Robert Jones, in fact, took his own players by surprise, really exploded for the first 10 metres and got away from the support as well as the cover. It's not the most comfortable looking scrum at the moment, as Slattery pressurised on the fringes again, this time Alan Reynolds, and it'll be interesting to see the way that Reynolds and Webster, especially in that Swansea back row, take the game to the opponents. Welsh international hooker Gary Jenkins, the aim is true this time at Richard Moriarty, the outside hand, although that was over the top, it's allowed, perhaps the line out was over. Jones has it. Aled Williams, the outside half. Interesting angle from Kevin Hopkins. Again, such good midfield defending by the Australians. They hardly ever seem to be pressurised in midfield. They take it nice and easily across, pick their little spots, and it's very difficult, as the Irish found out on Saturday, to find any holes there.
Absolutely, and if you notice with that tackle that the Aussies tackled Swansea on the Swansea side of the game line, and that's where you're expected to tackle, of course.
Notice the Australian three-quarter line, heavily weighted left side, which offers that little bit more space if should Tim Kelleher want to come right. That's the full back. Again, that's Swansea scrum. It has to be remembered as Gavin puts Slattery into a little bother. Aled Williams as well for an outside half, acting as a forward. Such a shame that it wasn't driven home. The Australian prop forwards, Matt Ryan and Andrew Blades, are replacements for the tour. Restart straight at Anthony Clement. The bounce favours him. Now he has Titley outside him, although he's wandered away from that. But weaving a delightful pattern yet again, Anthony Clement. Has the support been swift enough? It's the Australian number 7, Sam Scott-Young, who got into an offside position. Robert Jones again, eager and ready to execute the quick penalty. Gary Jenkins just held up. Jones again. The switch is on for Aled Williams. Lurking there is Richard Webster. Just slightly too complicated, and Alan Reynolds switches it then. 7-a-side rugby here from the Swansea club as Simon Davis attacks Damien Smith. Alan Reynolds well covered by Warwick Waugh. And what covering from the giant lock forward. Really, Australia had been stretched left and right, but yet this 22-year-old giant was there in position when Simon Davis was able to put in the lovely little pass. Just watch this, the determination. Whoa, clean through Alan Reynolds.
Tremendous period of play by Swansea, I thought there. It's great for their psychology. They're getting all the possession. They're not frightened of using it. 7 pairs of hands, that movement. Superb stuff by Swansea.
The line out degenerating into an early shambles still. The game, or the ball rather, as Simon Davis. It's unfortunate for him. The bounce seemingly was kind, or initially was kind, but in taking one eye off the ball, unfortunately, made something of a mess of it. Damien Smith comes into this narrow channel on the right-hand side, number 14 for Australia. You can see number 14 there. No great space for him there. That would be the natural way for scrum half Slattery to go. Indeed, Gavin and Slattery. That's the nursed little kick into the box. But again, so swift were the tacklers on Slattery that there wasn't time to pinpoint a spot. Matt Ryan is the man with hands on haunches at the front of that Australian line, opposed by Chris Clark. It's quickly one line out ball, but untidily done. And the pickup and drive, War sets it going. Slattery, well, the referee was in the way, and Slattery was unfortunate there. Was he also taken a little bit late? No. And the kick harmlessly over the dead ball line. The Australian team not familiar with some of Swansea's tactics. They well need to watch Alan Williams and Mark Titley et al. At the restart. They can make things happen quite quickly. Again, the touchdown as Gary Jenkins comprehensively shackled by Tim Gavin. Huge figure of a man, the Australian number 8. Tim Gavin stands out to that line out at the